Hey, y'all, welcome back to another edition of Knights of the Storm. This is our 185th episode, which is kind of amazing. We're almost up to 200. We'll have to do a special show for that. And today is the 18th of July, 2026. Today, we're going to kind of do a potluck. We've all got some kind of different stuff to throw in. I think we always over prepare and we always have stuff on the back burner. So this is kind of our way to clean up and finish the thoughts on stuff. And I love these kind of episodes because you never know where it's going to go. With me today, I have, of course, Ashley, Miss Think, Change, Repeat herself. And if you want to talk about your new show that you got, which had a lot of rave reviews on, by the way, the one you just dropped last night on Flight 800. Welcome, Ashley.
Hello, and thank you so much. Yes, so this weekend is important. I saw, and I kind of forgotten about this, and I'm not the best with my timelines, but that this is also the weekend that is the anniversary of the ear shooting heard around the world. But more importantly, it's the 30th anniversary of TWA Flight 800. So this past week, my friend Sean and I got the Fool Me Twice podcast up and running. I released an introduction episode of, how we met, all that stuff, what we're talking about. Then I released a 2-part series on propaganda based on Stuart Ewan's book called PR, A Social History of Spin. And that is important. It's foundational because you are recognizing a lot of these patterns from the early 1920s in Edward Bernays. Obviously, he was very foundational in that, but there's a lot of other players, and we kind of get into the techniques that they use, the competing faction of big business and big government, as well as how they were able to utilize the printed word. I know a lot of us know about that, then photographs, then radio, then television, and then it doesn't even touch on what we talk about so much, which is social media and the internet. But a lot of these propaganda techniques are very well worn. They know them well. They know how to manage them. I refer to them as the narrative managers. So we kind of lay the groundwork with that. Then we did a mini episode just kind of promoting that we were talking about TWA Flight 800 last night on our live. Then we did that episode, part 1, and then we're going to do a part 2 live. So kind of trying to weave these things together and launch that show and get it off the ground. But it's been a busy week. And then also I was fortunate enough to speak with Bronx Stomper on Thursday on my show. And it was a really good conversation. Obviously, Derek is a wealth of knowledge and on really important subject. And he's been in the game a very long time, and it was not blackpilling. So that was really good. He's feeling positive, even in spite of a lot of the uncertainty that we're dealing with weather and geopolitical stuff. So that's that.
Right on. I really did enjoy that episode with Bronx Stomper. I missed the tail end of it. I got to go back and watch it. I've been trying to do more family time stuff in the evenings. So it is what it is. We got to balance our time, right? But yeah, and I just wanted to mention that Sweets is the queen of links and linked your channel, your new channel up in the Rumble chat, and I pinned it. So if you want to go give a follow, please go give a follow and a like, and then, support. All right. And we're also joined today by Karen Carpenter. She is the lovely Lady of Liberty, soon to start her own show. And I think you've almost ironed out a time frame. So welcome, Karen, and talk about your show.
Well, thank you. I finally got someone, I think, who can do a graphic for me so I can avoid using AI because it would be very hypocritical of me to end up using AI for a graphic. My daughter is a fantastic artist, but she has been having a lot going on herself. So I found one of her friends I'm going to pay to do a graphic. So hopefully that will be done within the next day or two. And then probably it will be Monday or Tuesday at 5:30. I was also thinking about Friday at 5:30. So Ashley and I might have shows at the same time on Friday. It's sometimes. So I don't know. Probably. I'm not sure if it'll be Monday or Tuesday. I do have a guest scheduled for Monday, August 17th at 5:30, who I'm really looking forward to having. So I'm not sure if it'll be Monday or Tuesday. I would say let's I'm going to just go for it here. How about let's launch on Monday, July 27th at 5:30.
Right on. And Karen has kept the guest hush hush, so it'll be a surprise to us as well.
And I plan to continue doing that.
Right
That's the
on.
August 17th one. But yeah, let's say I'm going to start Monday, July 27th at 5:30, and we may move to Tuesday at 5:30, which is when Jason had the foxhole, but he's agreed to switch times with me. And then I may also do some on Fridays. And so Ashley and I may have to share that time or go concurrently. I don't know. I watch my grandson 3 days a week, so I kind of have to work around that too. So I really want to do the show, but then I also really want to be involved in my grandson's life, and my daughter's needs me. So, I'm trying to do a balancing act here, which we all have to do. But I truly love being here every Saturday with all the great people in the chat. And I appreciate you all so much and look forward to seeing you. So you all cheer me up. So thanks for being here and continuing to support me, even though I'm just kind of going along with the flow.
That's important to keep that balance. And I kind of went a little overboard with the show stuff and trying to back into the family stuff. And that kind of leads us into our verse of the week. If y'all want to go there. Are you ready?
Oh, hold on. Tony's birthday is the 29th. Hey, happy birthday, Tony. I'd love to do lunch.
Oh heck yeah. Happy birthday.
Yeah, for sure. And hope the new baby's doing great.
Right on. Well, so for the verse of the week, this is something we actually covered, I think 2-3 weeks ago. A few weeks ago we covered this, but we did 3 proverbs and I pulled one out because I have a different take on it. And I want you ladies and the audience's take on this. It's a different way of thinking about this proverb. So let me go ahead and play our sound bite and we'll pull it up. All right, so we did cover this one, like I said, a few weeks ago or whatever. This is Proverbs 22, verse 6. And of course, we don't need to build a context for Proverbs. It's just words of wisdom. We don't have to build the story or whatever. So this one says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I think when we referenced this last time, we talked about, being good parenting, which, Karen, what you finding that balance within your family to be a part of the training of that child is very important. And I had to step back a little to do the same, especially since I'm getting ready to start homeschooling JJ. That's going to primarily fall on me. But the other take I took on it when I was thinking about it, going through my topics this past week, what we're going to cover and what we covered last week, actually we cover almost every week, is the training that's coming from the environment, whether it be public school, the slow acceptance of tyranny, if you will, understanding, okay, I have a cell phone and they're monitoring me, but I'm not doing anything wrong. So what's the big deal? They've kind of normalized, taken away that privacy, that freedom. And I think that is a negative way of training up a child if we allow them to take this as this is just how it is type thing. And I think that's a lot of what we do our show on, is to let people understand that they're slow boiling the frogs, and our children are coming up thinking this is okay, this is normal. Whereas you take someone that's like, say, 60 or 70 years old, is like, this is not acceptable. And it's just something I thought about actually just this morning, thinking we need to use this verse again and say, look, it's not only our responsibility to train these children in the right way so they don't depart from it, but also protect them from taking this normalization of tyranny. And I just thought we would look at it from that angle, and I would love to get your thoughts. And Karen, if you don't mind, would you like to go first? Oh, she's on the phone, I think. Are you texting?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just replying to Big Ron in the chat.
Oh, chat is off the chain right now. Pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm an optimist. I can't help it. And I refuse to believe that we're defeated and that this is just the way things are going to be. Sure, technology moves forward. I think we're in for some difficult times financially and in many other ways, but people have managed through those hard times before. I've said several times my great grandparents were sharecroppers in Arkansas, or before that they came over for the Revolutionary War and were in Pennsylvania during the Revolutionary War. Why did they come to America? I can only imagine, but I'm sure it was to find opportunity and because they were struggling so much in the countries in Europe where they were living. And then so they've struggled through hard times and hardships and several fourth turnings or world wars. So, and we've survived. We managed to survive. And I think that I was fortunate enough to have a family that were actually very wise, kind, loving people. They had their faults, but through all of that, all of my great grandparents and 4 mothers and fathers managed to raise and continue a line of intelligent, kind, generous, loving people who value family. So I don't see this as anything that we haven't done before, and that it's important that we really think about that and don't give up and don't just surrender and say, well, I have to do it anyway. Even if we do have to do some of these things, like if we end up with a digital currency and in order to participate at all in society, which most of us will need to do, if we have to use a digital currency, that doesn't mean we have to lose our humanity. And that's why my motto has been for so long: guard your soul, guard your humanity, stay human, my friends. So I think that especially with children, that's so important, because those first years with the small child, you have the influence, you make the difference. Those first few formative years, they're highly programmable. That's how they learn to survive in the world. That's how they learn the social mores, how to read facial expressions and body language, and how to speak. So the language that we use, the attitudes that we have, the love and the smiles that we give, the eye contact, the one-on-one time, reading books with those kids. So many people say kids don't read these days. No, I mean, I understand there's a movement away from that. And I don't read the way I used to, but I still have a great love and respect for books and the written word. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews, etc., have those books, and we spend that time to read the books with them, because kids like books. They like the illustrations. They like the interaction with their parent. They enjoy that time. So we have to foster that. So when you say bring up the child in a way they should go or way they should be, I think of the time that my grandparents spent with me, my brothers, my extended family, all of that family time together, the time invested in me for music lessons, for just fun and games, making popcorn, whatever it was that we did together as a family, playing sports, all of those things, those interactive things that we did together. And that time that my parents spent making sure I had books. My parents were struggling. We were on a tight budget, but I had books, and that was important to my dad that I had books. So we have to make sure that we do those things for our kids and for our grandkids and for ourselves. And I just don't. I refuse to go quietly or silently into that dark night. That's just my personal philosophy.
I love it. I mean,
How's
that's
that
the
for an
family.
answer?
Oh, that was excellent, and it's the family taking control of how the training goes, and that's where because I think the one that we read a couple weeks ago was like, bring up your children. I went to the King James, and it actually uses the word train, and that kind of like struck me. I was like, yeah, we got to use that. And I wanted to go to Ashley last on this one and give her the final thoughts on the verse of the week. Again, I'll read it. Train up your child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And Ashley, you've done a lot of guest appearances on people's shows talking about MK Ultra and the slow roll of making things normalized. And I think that's part of the training. I know we've had John Kleisik on before who talks about that. He wrote the book School World Order, and how we've outsourced this sort of training. And I think this is slowly being normalized to where, and this kind of ties into the flock stuff, a lot of the flock stuff and the cell phone stuff and the stuff that the technology be great, but it kind of violates a lot of our privacy and a lot of our freedoms but that's, kids don't think of it that way. They think it's normal. So, and that's been, I think, trained into us. So I'm going to give you the final thoughts on this, Ashley.
Deb said, final thoughts already. Well, on this particular thing, yeah, I think that what you both have said is really important. Obviously, I think that a lot of people in this community and other communities, right? So, for example, when Derek and I were talking, he said that there's these kind of different cliques, even within the ranching industry, and that people are, they kind of are coming from different perspectives, and they believe different things, and they may be one way or the other politically, but there's a huge overlap in the work that they do. And there are even, he was pointing out that in some cases, like in the situation of a big city, sometimes the more commercial practices are at least very valuable still to provide food for all of those people, or to help with that, right? So I think that that is the way that I look at this space. We have a lot of people definitely in the liberty space, but we have a lot of people on the right and a lot of people, or reverse that, on the left, and a lot of people on the right that overlap, right? So a lot of people are doing these things that we believe in, which is, if you can homeschool, homeschool. If you can't, try to have these conversations with your children about what they may be being exposed to, and try to get your input in there. And the other thing is, and we've talked about this here, and I've talked to Karen about it, so I'm not trying to just crap on the public education system, because we know people in our circle and our friends and people that really matter to us, and in my personal life, that are in public school systems, and they care. So it's an institutional kind of a change from how things have been, like you were talking about with John. And he was mentored by Charlotte Itzerby, and they had these critiques of the way it was changing, not for the better, from a big Department of Education standpoint. But that doesn't mean that many people in that field don't care about their job and the children, because they do. And I know that Karen has said it before, and maybe she'll say it again, when I'm finished, that they care about the kids, right? But you can be vigilant as a parent and just try to keep track of what is, just be involved in your child's life, or in my case, my nieces and my nephews, and they're homeschooled, but and try to have the influence where you can in a positive way. Like, I'm not saying go, like I would tell my sister, well, you're not doing the right thing for your children. They're her children. Her and her husband are making the decision for their own children, but where I can be encouraging, right? And then encourage other fun things, right? Like field trips where children have an opportunity to go see things in real life, where they're not being, just sitting in front of a tablet, or like what Karen was talking about, donating to our little squirrel libraries in our neighborhood, or checking with the local school system and see if maybe those children could use some books, or whatever. So just trying to make a positive impact without being pushy, and without crapping on the decisions or the limitations of other people, because people in most cases do not have a choice. They need to put their children in public school because both parents are working. Maybe they don't have family around, like all of these. So that we need to consider, in my opinion, encourage, help where we can without being pushy. And then the other thing is, for ourselves, is just trying to be aware of, like you were talking about. So it's not only the MK Ultra that's part of it, because I think that combined with the old propaganda studies, where they figured out how to manage not only the behavior and attitudes of children, but of the entire population. And this is something that Billy Ray says is like, I was not awake, and I'm probably still not awake, right? So we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know how our perspectives are going to be changing. But what we do know is that there has certainly been propaganda that we've been exposed to from a lot of different angles our whole lives. And what I'm trying to do is peel away layers of that as I go, while recognizing there's still a lot there. And that was how, when I came to my personal realization that I thought that the United States government was fraudulent for a million different reasons, that was one that was one kind of recognition for me, but there were still many others of like, what do we accept from a medical perspective? What do we accept from a food perspective? All of these things that we're continuously going through and rethinking, because what we saw presented on the news or on television shows or in movies was presented to us as normal. And we do know that television has a huge influence on the behavior of people. So like there's a study where people watched a movie, and in the movie, somebody was stealing cash out of a box. And then some way this was arranged for people to be in a similar situation. And some of those people stole the cash out of the box. So it can be influential. And I think that we just try to manage what we're being exposed to in order to try to make the best decisions for us and our families and our community and our own discernment.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's right. Good point on not everyone can homeschool, and homeschool may not be the best solution if you're isolating your children, but if you're not training them in some form or fashion, something else is training them, whether it's intentional or through societal interaction. They're being trained. So yeah, I think it's a good synopsis. Yeah.
And I think that people just do the best that you can within the confines of where you find yourself, right? If it's impossible for you to homeschool, then just trying to make sure that you're passing on your values to your children. And like what Karen was saying, reading to them, and then kids love to go learn. So Derek was saying at their tour, they kind of have this, or at their farm, they have a tourism thing. So families and people can go and do a farm tour and things like that. And then near me, there's like a gem mining place. You've got science centers, you've got libraries. Kids love that stuff. So, and I think maybe one of the most important things that it boils down to is, spending time with your kids. That kids knowing that they are loved and safe, I think goes so much further than almost anything else.
Spending time. That's going to bring us to our first topic for our roundtable.
Can I just say a couple things?
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
A couple more things?
Yeah, sure.
That's another thing that I so appreciate about my upbringing is whenever we went anywhere, if there was a landmark on the side of the road, some historical landmark, some museum off, it doesn't matter what it was, we stopped and we looked at that. We read the history. We went, and I remember one time my mom, I'm going to tell a story. My mom was a Tupperware dealer in the 70s. She was very successful. I got my first stereo from her winning, her doing so well selling Tupperware. We had a ping pong table. She had a company car, which was one of those Gran Torino, I think it was, station wagons with the fake wood on the side. There was a little seat in the back that pointed backwards. I mean, she did really well. So we went to a Tupperware convention from California to Ogden, Utah. And I remember we went in some museum in Utah where there was like a petrified cake and a petrified cat and the weirdest things in this museum. But my dad would take us to every museum, every landmark, the Lewis and Clark Trail. I mean, we saw all of those things, and sometimes we'd be like, come on, Dad, let's go. But as time went by, it got to be where I really enjoyed those things, and they were trying to drag me out of the museums because I wanted to read every exhibit and all the information. So exposing your kids to those things, even though they don't want to do them or they might drag their feet, that information, that experience builds in them. It does have an impact on them. And I think that this is part of the verse. Even though you don't see the results right away with how you raise your children, the point of the verse to me is the child may go astray. They may have drug issues. They may get lost along the way in their young adulthood or teenage years. But eventually, when things iron out, or they may protest, I don't want to go to these museums. I don't want to take these piano lessons. I don't want to read these books. I don't care about this. But if you expose them long enough or well enough, that experience does stay with them, and eventually in their life they're going to come back around to that, and they're going to appreciate that helps shape the person that they become, and they will eventually look back and be grateful for those experiences. There's a good chance of that, even though you may not hear it, and they will pass those things on. So do it well, invest well in your children. That's Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
That's like you always say, guard your humanity. And that was what the verse did say. Train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. So yes, we do get, and I think that's an important thing you threw in there, was that they may go the other way, but they'll come back if that's been seeded in them. And on
I know I did when I was in my,
me too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and one quick thing, many of the people in this community here, they're into gardening and stuff like that, or having chickens or homesteading or whatever that is, whatever craft that is. And it's so great for kids to see you be good at that, be interested in that, working on learning. And of course, everything that like you're talking about, Karen, like doing all the learning and having the learning and curiosity encouraged is really special.
Right on. Handy says the Smithsonian gave him a headache from the info overload. He loved it. St. Louis Science Center, brother. If you're ever in St. Louis, go to the Science Center. It's more built for teen age, people who want to experiment and stuff. And they have an earthquake kind of replication machine and all kinds of cool stuff. I love it. And every time you go there, you're going to see something new. So anyway, let's jump into this first one. I want to talk a little bit about daylight savings time. Like I said, it's a random mix-up today. So they're talking about making daylight savings time permanent. They actually passed, where is it? House passes legislation to make it permanent. I don't think I highlighted anything here. I just wanted to get people's take on it, and I got some other information on the daylight savings time thing. Me, I hate it. I do like it when we go the one way where I get an extra hour sleep at night, but there's a lot of negative ramifications as well. So let me see. I had put some questions down here. Okay, so I wanted to know, drop it in the comments. Are you for or against getting rid of daylight savings time? Are we going to get stuck forward or backwards, or are we going to split the difference? And then how will this affect commerce and just generally everything? And I have some information on health here as well. Is it going to be good or bad? So I'm just going to throw it out there on the table and see who wants to talk about what they think about this daylight savings time thing. And I know they've talked about doing this for years. I thought they actually did it a few years ago, but apparently it's actually going to be done finally now. So we'll go with Ashley first. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm having some technical
catastrophes
issues over here. Yes, cat drama as per usual. It would not be me if I wasn't dealing with something with the cat. So this is Tommy. Anyway, yeah, I don't know that much about it, but I do know that I had listened to an Isaac Weishaupt show a long time ago. Is kind of getting into the financial incentive for some businesses to continue to support it, because if it gives them longer evening and summer hours, then it's, they make more money from that. It would be beneficial for me to do more digging from that regard, but I just thought it was an interesting episode on that subject. And then as far as our health is concerned, I'm pretty sure it's very bad for our health, and that especially whenever we end up falling back, where we lose an hour, that there is an increase in heart attacks and cardiac arrest. And maybe Handy could chime in on that and let us know. But just because it's more stressful on the body, it's messing with our circadian rhythm, it's messing with our sleep pattern. And for that alone, it should go away. Never mind the absurdity of daylight saving, like, oh, we're just changing the hour that it actually is. That's ridiculous. And then I will say that there was a time when I was working in a manufacturing plant, and I ended up having to work a 13-hour shift instead of a 12-hour shift. And I was pissed about that.
You didn't get paid either, did you? You didn't get paid.
I'm sure I got paid. The other shift, because it's 24/7 operation, they probably just got 11 hours, and you just get lucky one way or the other. If you want more money, great. If you want less time on your shift that day, great. But I did not want to be working 13 hours instead of 12.
I'm glad you brought up the health thing as far as the heart attacks and stuff, because I actually have info on it, and I thought it was bogus, but I did some digging into it, and you're right. I'll bring that up after we go to Karen to see her thoughts on, are you for or against it? What do you think on daylight savings?
Well, of course, I'm against it. I think it's ridiculous at this point. I believe that the original justification for it, whether this is the truth or not, I do not know. But I think that the original justification for it was so that the children, which this is also the justification for the summer break in school, was so that children could help more in the fields in the harvest time, and but that so that the agricultural workers or the farmers would have more time in the day to gather their crops at certain times of the year or work in the fields and make sure we had the proper food supply. I think that was the reason for daylight savings time and for summer vacations from school. But at this point, we are an industrialized society, and we don't need that, of course. And I know here it's just really depressing emotionally. It's more like a seasonal affective disorder, which absolutely is involved with the circadian rhythm, the amount of sunlight we get daily, the rain, etc., that when we get the shorter days already in the winter, but then they get even shorter because of the artificial time change, a lot of people get very depressed. And that is a very real thing. It does impact our bodies, our endocrine systems. I think the most heart attacks happen on a Monday mornings anyway. Handy can verify that with me, but I believe that most heart attacks happen at work on Monday mornings, or that's the most common time. And then if we change our sleep schedule on Sunday night, and so you're getting that hour less sleep that Monday when you have to get up and go to work, and people are more inclined to have heart attacks on Monday mornings anyway, then would only make sense that one less hour of sleep plus the change in the sunlight and all of our atmospheric conditions would make sense that we would have more heart attacks then, and plus the lack of sleep. So I don't think it's necessary at all. I don't know why it would be continuing to happen unless it's part of the agenda to keep us off balance and constantly having to deal with changes. I'm not sure, but I think it's a relic from the past. It needs to go away. I think some states already, we discussed in the chat, I believe Arizona doesn't change. And Deb says she knows someone who lives in Hawaii, and they don't have daylight savings time either. So I think it needs to go. And I just really hope that we don't get stuck in California here on the side with the shorter days in the winter. I just want regular, natural sun time. Could we all go back to our natural sun time? I don't want to be on the going forward or going back. I just want to be on what we were meant to be on. So that's my feeling about that.
I think that's kind of the overwhelming consensus in the chat, is that we'd rather just not do the switcheroo. And since we brought up the health thing, I actually did this because I thought it was, I did and yes, this is an AI summary, and I thought it was BS. I was actually going to use this to kind of like trash AI. But I did on my Brave, I did a Google search, what will be the impact of ending daylight savings time? And this is what came up as a summary. And they, of course, bring up a bunch of websites you can reference. And I'll just read the first part. Ending daylight savings time would eliminate. Okay, hold on. Let me go. Research indicates that abolishing the switch entirely prevents roughly 300,000 strokes and 2.6 million obesity cases. I was laughing when I read this, right? Annually in the US, if permanent standard time is adopted, whereas permanent daylight savings time offers fewer health benefits, health and safety impacts. The spring forward transition is associated with 6% increase in fatal crashes and up to 5% rise in heart attacks in the days immediately following. So yes, I won't go into the long summary, but I did reference one of the articles. This is actually from Reader's Digest, because I thought it was BS. And I'm like, let me look into this like further beyond an AI summary. And it says, here's what would happen if we got rid of daylight savings time. I'll throw this on screen. And Reader's Digest, we used to actually read this in school back before they had like a real curriculum that was pushed from the top down. When schools could do their own curriculum, we used to do a lot of Reader's Digest reading. I know I highlighted some stuff here. Maybe I didn't. Oh my gosh, it didn't keep it. Anyway, it actually talks about, okay, we'll just jump down to it. What would happen if there was no more daylight savings time? And these are backed by studies, by the way. People would get better sleep. Whether you're changing the clock forward or backwards, it can have a negative impact on a person's cardia, however you say that, the you should know how to say it, Karen, the rhythm, your sleep rhythm. It could take 5 to 7 days for your body to adjust to the new schedule. And I think anybody could relate to that if you've ever flown and had to deal with jet lag. It takes a few days to get over that.
Oh, circadian rhythm.
Yeah, that's it. Circadian. I couldn't.
It's so tiny I can't see it. Circadian rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit here. There we go. Well, that's too much. Okay. And then I was actually surprised. Reduced risk of heart issues. Research found that the spring daylight savings time changes are associated with 24% increase in acute myocardial infarction events on the Monday. Who said the Monday? I think that was you, Karen, that said Mondays. Following the change and switching out clocks may increase the risk of heart attacks. Now, this is, I mean, they're just crunching numbers here. So can you prove it? I don't know, but this is what the numbers tell us, you know. Same thing, reduced risk of stroke, reduced cost. That's one thing I was interested in, is the economical thing, because not all the world does daylight savings time, and you have to coordinate things. So I know just doing podcasting, and you are correct, Arizona, I was working with Serge the Purge, doing some shows with him, and they don't do daylight savings times. And we had a lot of misfires and miscommunication when those time things happened. Lower crime rates, which I found interesting. They say criminal rates actually go down, with robberies being reduced by 7% from the day before, and overall crime going down by 27% in the additional evening hour of sunlight gained on that day. That's interesting. And then it's, goes into how to prepare for the time change. So I thought it was an interesting topic. We're doing a round table today. Potluck, so I thought that was something fun to bring up. And I personally, Jason Barker's opinion is get rid of daylight savings time. We'll deal with it being a little darker early in the evening or a little darker in the morning, depending on where the earth, the round or flat earth, is positioned in space. So any thoughts on that, ladies?
Well, just a quick thing. Derek Bronx Sumper said in the chat that the time doesn't matter when he's in the field. It's not a 9-to-5 job. And I said, so you would prefer, for them just to leave it? He said, yes, just standard daily, or just like the standardized standard, and let it go. Leave it alone.
And that was, real quick before we go to Karen, to jump in, when I was living with grandma before I was in school. So I know when you start getting into school and start getting into work, those things matter. But when I was still not in kindergarten yet, and I got up when the roosters crowed, right? And we went and did our chores, and we did the work throughout the day. We took our nap in the middle of the day when the sun was the highest to stay out of the heat. We go out and do our afternoon chores, and we went to bed and had dinner when it was dark. The position of the sun drove our daily activities. It wasn't some mechanical thing that tells us we need to do this here or there, because now you're talking about, well, it used to be light when I did this, now it's still dark when I do this. It kind of messes with your head. So anyway, yeah, I agree for farmers. And I think it was initially done for farmers for market reasons or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, Karen, final thing on the daylight.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that my understanding was that it was originally done so that farmers had more daylight, or the agricultural, because we had an agricultural economy. But I think that it's gotten to just be a relic of the past, and I don't think most people have any idea why we're doing it. And I know that it does have health effects. I've always known that, and that the older you get, the more those effects they can linger. Just changing your sleeping pattern takes 2 or 3 weeks for your body to adjust to that change. It, like from shift work, we know that people who rotate shifts have huge fallout in their personal lives because of the change in their circadian rhythm. And it takes your body 2 or 3 weeks, I believe it's 3 weeks at least, to adjust to a new sleeping pattern like that, or a new schedule in your life. So it's a big deal. It's not something small. People act like it was just an hour, but that 1 hour of sleep can be a huge have a huge impact on your body, for sure. So I would be glad to see that go away. It's completely illogical, unnecessary, and annoying. in my opinion.
I completely agree. So I have some more information on the myocarditis thing because that kind of ties into the risk, which may be why they're doing this, but I mean that's completely hypothetical, conspiratorial. But I'll forgo that for now and hand it over to one of you ladies to cover one of your topics. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Karen.
Either way.
All right,
Oh,
Karen.
okay.
Let's do it.
All right, throw up my screen, por favor. And I won't be able to see the chat. Okay. I am not very familiar with this topic. I didn't really know about it at all until the last few days. I haven't been paying much attention to the fires going on, although I know that there are people across the United States, especially the northern states, that are having a lot of issues with smoke. I'm very, very familiar with geoengineering, with the fires in California throughout the years, Santa Rosa, the Paradise Fire, the fires in the LA area. We had a wildfire here a few years ago where the giant redwoods up in Sequoia National Park, the General Grant tree, was in danger. Those trees are being wrapped with huge blankets. These ancient redwoods were in danger of burning. So I'm very familiar with the forests, the deforestation, so many dead trees, the aluminum falling from the sky, glyphosate, etc. So I know that, and the lack of tending to the forests or proper forestry, we all are familiar with those issues, and that's been going on for quite a long time. I remember the huge fires in Australia. The whole coast, I believe the whole coast of Victoria was burning there in Australia. And it's interesting how some of these fires coincide with mining areas or areas slated for high-speed rail or other development type of things. And then also we know during the floods, various floods, that there have been mining areas that have been coincidentally seem to be flooded out and those types of things. So I'm not saying any of this is facts. It's just something to think about. And I wouldn't put anything past some people. So this is something to consider also. Our friend Deb and her cousin Brian, our husband Brian and family live in Minnesota. And Deb has been researching the boundary water areas there and the mining that is being pushed for. It's copper mining that wants that industrial interests and mining interests are pushing for many years, and people have been fighting the good fight, really trying to save these boundary waters, which are a huge wildlife sanctuary and a huge source of fresh water from the mining operations. So the fires are, the boundary waters cross into Canada, so they straddle Canada, and the fires are right there with where the boundary waters are and where these potential copper mines are. So she sent me several links, and I'm hoping Deb will come on one of my first shows, either the first one or the second one. I'm putting pressure on her. Deb, I need you to come on my show, please, to cover this in depth. So she's got a lot going on in her life too, family wise, and she's a great family person. So this is a boundary waters wilderness burning at U.S.-Canada border. This is just from this last week. Wildfires flared earlier this week and destroyed thousands of acres in Manitoba, Ontario, and Minnesota, with many of the fires straddling the U.S.-Canadian border. The Western Fire Chief's map on Thursday afternoon tracked at least 17 wildfires in Minnesota. This was Thursday. 17 in Minnesota, at least 10 in Canada near the border. The largest in Canada was over 70,600 acres, while the largest Minnesota fire was 13,500 acres. The Boundary Water Canoe Area, or BWCA, a popular wilderness area stretching 1 million acres on either side of the border, has been hit extremely hard. Nearby residents posted videos showing the plumes of smoke covering the sky, with one local posting that he hasn't slept since watching his home burn. What caused the fires? Officials reported that a downed power line caused at least one fire in Minnesota. Where have we heard that before? PG&E, California, found guilty of many cases of manslaughter. Pacific Gas and Electric. While at least one other resulted in an abandoned campfire in Manitoba, Canada, official reported at least one or other fire sparked during a lightning storm, and several fires were undetermined causes. And they spread to areas due to dryness and record high heat in the region. Okay, so there's been a peacetime emergency called by Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, activated the National Guard. Rangers evacuated the Boundary Lake area. Forest officials estimated that 10,000 campers and canoers were within the park were evacuated. As of Tuesday, at least 17 people were rescued and no injuries were reported. Okay, so, and this also affected New York, and Michigan is having issues also, Wisconsin, but I want to focus more on these boundary waters. So this is another article from June 2nd, 2026. A vote to mine near the boundary waters puts a vital freshwater wilderness at risk. The Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness is a critically protected wilderness region in northern Minnesota, encompassing over 1 million acres of the Superior National Forest. Beyond Recreation is a critical freshwater ecosystem containing 20% of the freshwater in the entire National Forest system. It forms part of the larger Quetico Superior ecosystem, which stretches across the U.S.-Canada border. In protecting these lands, Minnesota historically has had one of the most expensive state-level environmental safeguards. In April, this conserved area was placed on the chopping block by the U.S. Senate and passed a resolution voting 54-49 to overturn a 20-year federal suspension on mining across roughly 225,000 acres in the Superior National Forest, including parts of the BWCA watershed. The measure effectively grants approval for sulfide ore, copper, nickel mining projects. So it grants approval for sulfide ore, copper, nickel mining projects, primarily Twin Metals Minnesota, a subsidiary of the Chilean mining giant Antofagasta. Opposition groups have fought for years to block the proposed mine, saying it could contaminate the region's interconnected lakes and rivers with heavy metals, sulfuric acid, and other toxic substances. Twin Metals claims it has its mine plan of operations that we know this land, we've studied it for years, mentions indigenous tribes, and outlines alleged plans for responsible mining. However, scientific evidence shows something different. So the primary concern is the reliance on sulfide ore mining as a process that generates a lot of acid mine damage, as sulfuric acid, commonly known as battery acid. So this has been in the works for many years, and people have been fighting this mining operation. Here's another one. This one isn't... I just wanted to show more of what this looks like. Save the Boundary Waters is leading the fight to protect America's most visited wilderness permanently. And I know things like the Sierra Club, they're compromised, or they're NGOs or government cutouts, or, they're not on the up and up. I know that there are questions to all of that. And then there's a question of private property, public property, forest, public lands, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is that mining in this water, this area with such a huge amount of fresh water could cause big issues with the water pollution and the groundwater, et cetera. And that's what I'm looking at here. And also we've seen so much attack or use of water or questions about groundwater being contaminated by data centers lately too. And this seems to be right along that same lines of thinking or questioning or concerns. Is our fresh water being under attack and not being protected the way that it should be? So we are a coalition of 400 plus businesses and organizations for Save the Boundary Waters. So this is a map of where the boundary waters are here between Canada and Minnesota, and Lake Superior's over here. And this is actually looks like an aerial photograph of the Boundary Waters. The Boundary Waters is canoe country. It's the largest wilderness area east of the Rockies and north of the Everglades. Along with the Superior National Forest, it contains 20% of all the fresh water in the entire National Forest system.
I'll bet that's packed full of walleye. I would love to fish that. That looks
Yeah,
gorgeous.
I'm sure it's magical. I'm sure it's just magical. And this is talking about bringing up the children in the way they should go. And we spent my whole childhood in search of the great trout pond or the trout stream. You know, we traveled all up and down the West Coast, over to the Rockies, the northern states, especially particularly Montana, looking for great fishing holes and in search of the great brown trout, rainbow trout, brook trout. And I so appreciate that time spent in nature and the appreciation that gave me for water, trees, soil, wildlife, time with solitude, time to commune with nature. Growing up that way, it's just a treasure that I would wish that all children would experience. And these wildlife areas and these Everglade water areas like this, I mean, they're just absolutely priceless. That's one of the main gifts of being human to me, is enjoying those things. And that's part of guarding your humanity and passing things on to your children, is that those experiences. And they can decide whether they prefer the mountains, the ocean, the rivers, the lakes, whatever it is that they enjoy. But I think it's important to give them the opportunity to have that exposure. And so if we see these areas that have been safeguarded for generations, especially, and by native peoples also, being defiled, it's something that I don't know. I just don't see. It's something that goes. It's a horrible way to be stewards for coming generations. So the proposed sulfur or copper mining threatens these waters and forests. A copper mine in the Boundary Waters watershed will pollute the wilderness for generations to come, causing irreversible harm to water quality, wildlife, public health, and a sustainable outdoor recreation-based economy. So this is SaveTheBoundaryWaters.com. And then here's a few more. Congress overturns a ban on mining near the boundary waters. This is April 15th, 2026. Vote expected Thursday. Projects still must undergo lengthy permitting processes, but we know how President Trump likes to circumvent and dispose of permitting processes. The U.S. Senate voted 50 to 49 Thursday to allow sulfide mining in areas near the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness. That's the same one. Here's the facts about the Boundary Waters and why we need to protect it. Representative Pete Stauber held what amounted to a show trial for the Boundary Waters. Well, isn't that a surprise? A show trial. This is an older article from 2023. So that's just a quick overview of the Boundary Waters issue, how the fires play into this. The Boundary Waters straddle Canada and the northern United States, and their fires are affecting those areas. There are copper mines that are copper ore that the mining companies have been really itching to get at for quite a long time. So we know that in North Carolina, and I'm sure Ashley can address this better than I can, there were areas that had precious metals or rare earth minerals in the soil that the local communities had been trying to defend themselves from these mining companies for quite a long time. But once you had the flooding and the decimation, there really wasn't much. It was kind of game over with at that point, as far as I know. So that's all I wanted to cover on this. I don't want to go in too much into depth on. I'm not too familiar with it, and I do want to have Deb on my show. So, and we'll talk about it more in depth. And then I also have one more clip that I promised to play for LTO. Shall I do it now, or do you guys want to chime in on this first?
No, go for it. Let's play it.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm a big fan of Rick Beato for one thing. He's just fascinating. I've been going back and watching a lot of his interviews. I've been into Steely Dan lately, and their lyrics and some of their musicians. So I want to do maybe feature on some kind of music history also in my show weekly, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, some kind of music topic. But so Billy Joel did a long interview with Rick Beato. This was released this week. And I haven't always been the hugest Billy Joel fan. I love his music. I'm very familiar with it, but I don't know all that much about it. But it was a great technical episode as far as music theory goes and classical music, his appreciation for classical music, and a lot of great stories about how he wrote some of his most famous songs. It's really worth watching. I really enjoyed it. But I talked about the song, The Wichita Lineman. I'm getting a phone call. I switched it off. I've talked about the song, The Wichita Lineman, as being considered by many to be one of the most perfectly written songs ever. And we had it in Name That Tune. And LTO said, oh, I've still got Wichita Lineman on my mind. And all week last week after we did our Name That Tune, and I put the Wichita Lineman in. And it was written by the great songwriter Jimmy Webb, who also has a lengthy episode with Rick Beato, if you're interested in Jimmy Webb. So at the end of the episode with Billy Joel, there's a little bit here I wanted to share about what Billy Joel has to say. And I wanted to especially send it out to Lieutenant Oracle of Truth. So let's do it. Hopefully you can hear it. We can all hear it. Am I muted? Mute me.
You've tapped it out. You've reached such a high level that you can't stand not reaching that level anymore, and you hate yourself. You beat yourself up. And I didn't want to put myself through that anymore.
Okay, so last thing here, Billy. If I were to say, what is a perfect song that you didn't write that's a song that you're like, oh, that's a perfect song by any artist?
How about that? What a great chord progression. And I need you more than want you. And I want you for all time. And the Wichita Lineman. However it goes. It's such a beautiful
Jimmy
song.
Webb.
Jimmy Webb. Perfect. The perfect song.
Perfect song.
Yeah, it is. To me, that's one of the best written songs ever.
Billy, thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
So that's for you, LTO, and all the people who love the Wichita Lineman or Glenn Campbell or great music and songwriting and music in general. I was really thrilled to see that. It was a great little surprise at the end of that long interview with Billy Joel. And that's all I had to share today.
Well, thank you, Karen. I want to get Ashley's thoughts on the land grab perspective. And when you're done, Ashley, I want to share. This is kind of timely. I didn't know you were bringing this, Karen, yesterday when I was looking through stuff, but I have an email that's related to this topic from a listener, a friend and listener. So I will save that till the end. Let's get Ashley's thoughts on this, because I know that's kind of personal to you as well, because you live in that area. So does Little John, who was in the chat. So go ahead, Ash.
Well, Bronk did say that he was quoting David Allan Coe that a perfect song talks about mama, train, trucks, prison, and getting drunk. So I just want to throw that out. Just a joke, obviously.
Isn't that Hank Williams Jr.?
No, it's David Allan Coe.
It was David.
He's talking about he wrote his friend who had written the song for him, and he said, this is the perfect country and western song. And he writes him back and says it was not the perfect country and western song because it does not list the following things. So then he wrote him the verse back, and then it became the perfect country and western song, because then that's when he said he was drunk the day his mom got out of prison. He went to pick her up in the rain, and before he could pick her up in the pickup truck, she got run over by a train. So it had all all the coverage.
I always thought that was Hank Jr. Okay, I didn't know that was David Allan Coe. I like that song.
Yeah, not Hank Jr. It's in that sphere, but David Allan Coe, and he's definitely a little more of a wild card in the rebel country space. But anyway, so to what Karen was saying as far as what was going on in North Carolina, I really need to do more digging. There was a lot of discussion about the lithium mines that were in Kings Mountain and also in the Asheville area. And then there's a place between Asheville and Boone known as Spruce Pine. And it is a place that is supposed to be the home of a very important type of quartz that is used in electronics. So there definitely was a lot of conversation surrounding that. There was a lot of fumbling the bag from a government and FEMA perspective during that time. We know that was well documented and made more messy by the fact that you're dealing with a lot of different counties in the same area that are dealing with unbelievable damage. Like it literally changed the topographical map. So that's something for me to check, but definitely people were bringing that up, and at the very least, even if it's nothing, it would be an opportunity for a company that is invested in that to potentially do a land grab. Because if you have poor people in the mountains, and not everybody was poor, of course, like if we're talking Buncombe County, and Little John can speak better to this than I, but if they were living in, which is where Asheville is, so there's a lot of money there, but otherwise you have a lot of poor rural people and this is something that Yona and I talked about too, that if all of it overlaps or it looks similar to what we saw in Lahaina in that people would not really get the value back, or even the Palisades fire or many other such disasters, that they would not be able to get back the money to rebuild. So if you had an old house that was destroyed and then you get paid back for that, that's no longer enough to cover a brand new house. So there's definitely those issues, but really it was a huge debacle in Western North Carolina and everywhere else that had a lot of damage. So worth me doing a little more digging in to report back to y'all on that. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, that was a great topic, Karen and Deb, and I'm looking forward to hearing you discuss that further in depth. I know a lot of people that are in the Midwest and the Northeast who have been suffering this week with the unbelievable smoke, whether that's Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Michigan, like people all over are really struggling with that. So it's been a big problem. And then I wanted to bring up something. This is not it is not what Karen was talking about, but I thought that if you are interested in pursuing this line of inquiry as far as what exactly could be setting up these places to be more prone to fire and making your own decisions, whether or not you feel like this is being deliberately done or if it's just egregious mismanagement, wherever you are, there's a woman called Bettina Engler, and I'm going to share my screen here. And she is, it's been a while since I've had any interactions with her, but she has a Substack here. And actually, maybe I can go to the YouTube channel, but I'll drop the link for this and this YouTube channel if I can share this. There we go. And so this is her episode that was done August 26th. So I guess it was last year, 2025. But she has this man who is involved in forestry management and firefighting in Canada. And it is a great episode. So it is not discussing what Karen brought to us today and what she and Deb have been discussing, but it is talking about forestry management in Canada and the fact that almost every single province uses, and Karen and I were talking before the show, they do that in the States as well, but that they use Roundup as a way to do deforestation essentially, and maybe even they call it forest management. But what it does, and we know this for our food system, that they actually use this to spray on wheat. It's why so many people are gluten intolerant. One of the reasons is because they spray glyphosate as a desiccant on the wheat. So that means that there really is no necessity in order to do that, but they do it to dry the wheat out to make it usable and to be able to do that faster. So if they're managing our forests this way, this conversation is really excellent. And almost every single province, and I think maybe Quebec is the only one that does not allow that, and they have far less forest fires. And this also goes into, this was when Nova Scotia was burning last year. I believe it was last summer, and there was a huge amount of restrictions for people to even be able to go out in the forest. They also discussed the fact that in this situation, they had removed fire towers as being able to use that as their fire warning system for forest fires. Okay. And the logic behind that was that they would have people on cell phones who were able to call it in faster, see it, do photos, all those things. Well, then once these fires started last year in Nova Scotia, they banned people from the woods, and they certainly banned people from having any type of lithium on them, which would be a smartwatch or a smartphone or anything like that. So then they had taken away the fire towers, said that people on their cell phones would be able to report it, then banned people, and then especially banned people from having their cell phones. So I'm just saying, make it make sense. So what other types of policies are being factored into the wildfires? And it's not only affecting our friends up in Canada, and obviously we know that by all of the smoke billowing into the northern part of the United States this week. But these types of things I find to be educational. This was a pretty long one. Yeah, it was over 2 hours, but I thought it was a great episode. And there's several people that are on this episode who have some good insight, good questions. And but this speaker was really, really good. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat for anyone that wants to check it out. But this was something that, I wasn't that familiar with it at that time. And it ended up kind of just adding a little bit more to my knowledge base about what are we doing here. So even if we don't want to make accusations that fires are being deliberately set in order for mining or land grab or anything like that, that the bottom line is these things do not make sense in any way that you would do if you actually wanted to manage forest fires. So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, this is one of my first rabbit holes, was the geoengineering, what's in it, and then the forestry. And then, there were fires in California years ago, around 2017, 2015. Santa Rosa had fires, and Deborah Tavares has done a lot of work about this topic and the zoning involved. In California, you can see where the fires have burned over the years, separate fires, one including the Paradise Fire, that actually the maps coincide with the plans for the high-speed rail, which is a huge debacle in California. But the proposed path for the high-speed rail there have been fires there over the years. I'm not saying it was done deliberately, but I have all these maps in my phone. I can't throw them away. Every time I switch phones, I save these maps. So this is not a new thing that we're seeing, but it's on a much larger scale. It seems to be the same thing with the fires in Australia years ago. The water was an issue. It came out that some of the water was being sold to China. The ranchers in Australia with these huge fires were having trouble getting enough water for their cattle, let alone dealing with the fires. And the water, a lot of the water was actually being deported to China from Australia. So we see this huge struggle going on with zoning. I think zoning is key here. Someone in chat mentioned zoning, and I think that's a lot of what's going on here. And then as far as the glyphosate goes, I believe, and I can't verify it, I believe that glyphosate is being injected into quite a few trees. So it's not only being sprayed, it's being injected. And of course, the aluminum that we know is falling from the sky, which people have done a lot of testing of soil, of their own bodies, of a lot of samples, lab samples. So aluminum is up. The aluminum content is up, and the aluminum is also a desiccant. It also prevents trees from uptaking water and nutrients. And as far as the wheat, Ash was absolutely right about the wheat and glyphosate. And of course, we know Roundup Ready corn. The corn is all treated with glyphosate. And there's an issue now Bront Stumper talked about on the show he did with us. And I've talked to him on the phone about this, about corn, and how it's not really nutritious at this point. It's been changed so that the nutrient content is not there, but also that it's Roundup Ready seeds. And so the seeds have to be bought each year from the the seed dealer, et cetera. So glyphosate's a huge issue. And then we also know that it's been granted immunity, which is another problem. And I was going to mention, I like to eat black beans. Legumes are so healthy. So I buy organic black beans, but then I was upset to learn that black beans, organic black beans, also can have glyphosate sprayed on them at harvest time. So if it's used when they're harvested, when they're not growing or not in their processing, but when they're harvested as a desiccant to get the foliage off the beans, they can still be labeled organic. So I personally think that all of the grains have been adulterated to the point where we're better off if we can get our grains from another country, for perhaps pasta from Italy. There are a lot of people who think that we aren't really gluten intolerant. We're actually glyphosate intolerant. So if you want to use flour, import it from a European country to make your bread. I know there are a lot of people are into sourdough these days, and I'm seeing discussions with, where do you get your flour so that it doesn't have Roundup in it? What brand do you use? And so many of these brands are being sold out now. I'm on a spot on Instagram that talks about how even the high end grocery stores like Sprouts, and we talked about this with Courtney Turner at one point, Sprouts has been caught using Frank Tyson chicken in their house brand Sprouts chicken that's supposed to be high quality. So our food situation is a real problem here. And I'm sorry to get off on the food, but the glyphosate ties right on in with that. And then also these fires. And we know that there's a lack of forestry management. And then it seems that we're having incendiaries sprayed. And if not that, then at least desiccants, which are drying out the water in the trees' contents. So that's a problem. That's a big rabbit hole. It was one of my first rabbit holes because there were so many fires in California.
I got to jump in here now because this is going to play in good to the email I got from Dougallug. Dougallug sent me an email. But you know, we had talked about the Lahaina fires. We talked about the Los Angeles fires. Y'all made a very good argument for these fires happened exactly where they want to build their little 15-minute no-car city. And in the middle of all that was the campus where they're going to host the games later, and it wasn't touched. And they advertised that they wanted to build this area up as such to accommodate the game. So it almost looks intentional. We can't prove that. We can only speculate it. Are these fires intentional in order to grab the land, or is it a target of opportunity that says, oh, wow, okay, now we can grab the land? And I want to point something out because I will get into property. We probably won't have time, but I want to get into property tax stuff. But one of y'all alluded to, you know, if you get burnt out on your home, let's say, and this happened in Lahaina and happened in LA, a lot of places, your property tax, they value your property at a certain value, but that's not necessarily the value that your insurance company values it at. Hence the replacement cost due to inflation. They may have valued your property at $500,000, and that's what you're going to get for a total replacement, but it's going to cost you $800,000 to rebuild, not on top of the cleanup cost to remove the old debris. So a lot of these people that cannot return to their property end up selling it for pennies on the dollar to get out from under that tax obligation. You know, these bigger companies like BlackRock and whatnot are going to come in and snatch them up. And it's going to, you know, serve their plans of doing their whatever 15-minute city, if you want to call it that. Maybe it's just an apartment complex, whatever. I do know that Aaron Moss, who used to host the show with me, he was out in Lahaina area a few years ago. And I said, bro, while you're out there, drive by and take a look. And he did. And he said almost every single property out there had the same developer sign on it. So it was obviously one big, massive corporation that snatched up all those properties. Now, can I make the argument that they did some kind of intentional burnout with space lasers and, you know, the blue roofs were saved? You know, I don't want to go there. It could just be a target of opportunity to say, hey, this is a big plot of land that we could build a resort on or something. I don't know. I can't prove that. I can't prove that the sole cause of these wildfires we're seeing are because of chemtrails, because we do know that those are, I almost want to call them adjuvants, but they're
It's a
accelerants.
contributing factor.
Exactly, contributing factor. But I will tell you a personal experience, and I've seen this 2 years in a row now, actually 3 years in a row, going to Colorado and back. The way that we go, we take we don't go up to Highway 70 and across towards Denver because we just don't like that. I mean, if you want a boring half of your life, drive through Kansas on Highway 70. It is boring. So we take like a we kind of follow the Santa Fe Trail. We go down south, and it's a much more scenic thing. But at one point, we go by this river, which is, I think, a tributary to the Arkansas River, and there's a lot of farmland around there. Now, the trees there, they're kind of like a cottonwood type tree. I think they're cottonwoods. The ones close to the water are completely bare. There's no leaves, no bark, no nothing. They're just, it looks like driftwood standing up out of the ground. But the trees further away from that water, and it's not a huge river or nothing, it's maybe 25, 30 meters across where we cross the bridge. The trees further away from the water are healthy. It's just the ones that are close to the water. And that tells me that, oh, we have some runoff here from glyphosates. These trees are soaking up that water and it's killing them. It's drying them out. Now, to caveat on top of that, what we did see last year, we passed that area by and they had ripped up a lot of those trees and had them piled along. We kind of tie into another highway, and there was a big open area. They just had them piled there. This year they were gone. So they're doing at least some mitigation. Now, what if that mitigation doesn't occur? That becomes a tinderbox. You know what I mean? And so there's, like you were saying, Karen, a lot of contributing factors, but they don't need to do that intentionally. They can wait for the opportunity to arise to snatch up property. Because let's say a farmer dies and their children inherit the property, because the way it's assessed, right? The way it's assessed by the county or whatever, they can't afford the tax on it. And then they have to auction it off. But here's another thing that happened. This is where I'm going to get the Doug's email, and you guys can talk on any of these topics. I'm just talking about land acquisition and different ways they can go about it. Not necessarily space lasers causing it or anything like that. Although who knows, right? Who knows? Anything is possible, like Ricky would say.
I think that, okay, having lived in California with the evil Rothschild owned Pacific Gas and Electric, having power lines that fall, quote, conveniently, and having been convicted of many cases of manslaughter in the Paradise fires, and they can't keep their infrastructure sound enough that now we have blackouts when the wind blows. Excuse me, blackouts when the wind blows. That's ridiculous. So I think that it's planned obsolescence. I think that a lot of the electrical lines are not maintained properly. I had relatives that were linemen that worked night and day, and still I know that they do, but I'm sure I would be surprised if there are enough linemen on the job to maintain things. And there's the planned obsolescence. And then we're talking about if I live relatively close to the Sierra Nevadas, which have huge expanses of oak trees and different kinds of conifers and other types of trees. And it's unnerving. And this has been going on for 10 years. I've noticed this, the percentage of the forest that is brown. Mm-hmm. And of course, they say it's a bark beetle, but when you have a high aluminum content, you leave your tree's immune system compromised so that the bark beetles can move in and feast on the trees. So bark beetles.
Aluminum is also an accelerant. If it does catch fire,
yes,
it's an accelerant.
Yes, and some of the other elements that are sprayed, aluminum. Some people during the Australia fires were basically saying that sparkler dust was being sprayed from the sky. And then there are people who also report a lot of aerial activity, and we do see more aerial activity. I know I do in certain days. Many will go for 2 weeks, not a tic-tac-toe in the sky, and then all of a sudden it's very intense. So people report seeing those aerial spraying operations uptick before fires, and that's a pattern that people have seen going back. And of course, it's, I can't prove any of that. It's just speculation. But I do think that there are a lot of factors that play in, and you can set the stage. you can leave. For example, our neighbors, they like to shoot off fireworks, illegal fireworks, whatever. And so we made sure that we cleaned up our dry brush and our pine needles on the other side of the fence from them before 4th of July, because we knew they were going to be shooting up illegal fireworks that might land on our yard, and then our house could burn down. So you can set things up so that it's a chain of events can unfold just by neglecting maintenance, which we know is being done with the forests. And then I do know someone who lives in the LA area and has an inside scoop that the permitting process where the fires were, the Palisades fire, the permitting process, it's almost impossible to get a permit. And those are people that were wealthy. But I'm sure that when most of those people built their homes, they would have been $300,000 or $400,000, $500,000. And now to rebuild those homes would be $2 or $3 million probably in that area, which is close to the beach, close to Malibu. But that was a hoity-toity suburb there in the Pacific Palisades. It was a high-income suburb, but a lot of the homes had been there for quite a long time. So, but the permit process is not conducive to rebuilding at all, and I have that from an insider in the LA area.
Yeah, and then there's, like I was talking about, the disparity between what the state or the county or whatever thinks that property is worth versus what the insurance will pay out. There's a huge disparity there as time goes on. And I do want to read this email, and Bronx Stomper, I want to address what he's talking about. He talks about selling stuff as organic that's not organic, because we're talking about potential land grabs here, right? There's people that get in trouble for that. Sometimes you get drift over. You end up having an organic farm that's not organic. Well, this happened in Colorado. I've talked about this in the Springs. I've talked about this in the past when they had that foam that they spray on the aircraft fires or whatever, and they had a collection pool to collect it. So they're out there training, practicing to put out aircraft fires with this foam that has the PCBs or PLAs or whatever, they're cancer causing, and they cause birth defects and all kinds of other things. And it wound up getting into our groundwater. It was a big freaking scandal back then, and they had to give people free water and stuff like that, and like bottled water. But there was an organic farm, and this is just an example of how this can happen if you're talking about overdrift or groundwater contamination and becoming a land grab. There was a farm there that grew organic stuff, and they sold it at local markets and stuff, and they were making a killing on it because, just growing good stuff. Well, when that groundwater thing happened, they couldn't be classified as organic anymore because there was contaminants in the groundwater that it was uptaking. So they wound up growing like feedstock or something like that. And just as an example of how the situations, it may not even be intentional, but the situations may arise where a person loses their business and can't afford to pay their property taxes and can't afford to stay in business, so the land becomes available. That's kind of what I'm talking about. And then there's other ways, and I'll jump to this email real quick, and we'll go to Ashley. This comes from Dougalug. This is another way they grab your property. He says, starting last Monday, I noticed county sheriffs at this guy's home. He was telling me, I won't read the beginning part of it, but he's talking about a guy that he drives by his home all the time. He says, he saw the county sheriff at this guy's home while heavy equipment picked up the old vehicles. So this guy had a barn with some trees growing around it and old vehicles. This is typical. If you live anywhere near the country, you see houses like this where they just park an old car, they get a new car, and they stack up. We had a bunch of old cars in our field as well, and they end up growing trees through them. I've actually got a picture of a pickup with a tree growing through the bed. The tree's like 50 foot high. It's huge.
Hey, you should share that, Jason. Maybe you should make a Knights of the Storm store and make a little print. I don't know. That sounds like a cool picture.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, so he says that he drove by one day, and the county was out there with heavy equipment picking up the old vehicles and set them on a trailer and hauled them off. That all ended yesterday. I drove by it this morning and noticed that all the cars had been gone, or had seemed to be gone. On my way back a couple hours later, the sheriff and the police from Rockford and Sparta were there. All the local fire trucks and his barn had been burnt. I have another mutual friend whose personal hot rod, a 34 T bucket, Thad, was in that barn. I spoke with him at the fire. They were both watching or whatever. When I stopped to watch for a few minutes, I think the property owner was unable to pay his property taxes. I understand he got arrested when he told the sheriff to get off his land. While he was in jail, they cleared out the cars and burned his barn. I think the city wants his 40 acres for something more lucrative. Maybe a data center, maybe an apartment complex, maybe something. But I've been dealing with this all week. As you both know, I've been trying to go through registering my cars and the property tax, the personal property tax they do here in Missouri, and it's just been a nightmare. They have 100 ways to Sunday to get your property if they want it, if they really want it. Now, this guy's 40 acres. I thought it was 100. I think in our private chat, I had said it was 100 acres, but it was only 40 acres. But still, they have 100 ways to Sunday to get your property. And I won't go off into the property tax thing. I think that's ridiculous. You can never own anything. But the fact that they can literally pull you off your land, and before you go to court or anything like that, come and take your property and burn your building down. And I had told, I talked to Doug about this. I said, I've seen properties be confiscated and they're usually auctioned off. They normally sell them as is. Why would they burn the barn down? Why would they take the property? I understand taking the old cars and maybe cleaning it up if they want to get more on auction for it, but burning the barn down actually decreases the value because you've lost a functional building. It could be a training opportunity to do a controlled burn for the fire department, but they're kind of reluctant to do that. My uncle was trying to get rid of a building on a property he was trying to sell, and the building was going to cost more to demolish than it was if it was just not there. So he tried to offer an opportunity for the local fire department to come out and burn it as a training event, and they refused to do it. So I don't know. I'm just, it seems like more and more we're starting to see these seizures of property either through a natural event. Okay. I air quoted that for those listening on audio, a natural event, things that seem to be stacked up in place to make a natural event more likely to happen. The case that you brought up, Karen, about LA was kind of interesting because that was the same situation in the entire area, but the one area that didn't need to burn didn't burn. So that is a compelling case there. And I believe, wasn't Monica Perez involved in that? I think her house didn't burn, but the ones around her did. So that was fortunate.
Yes, she was the only one whose house didn't burn, but I think she had quite a bit of damage.
There was a couple of people whose houses didn't burn in the neighborhood, but it was few and far between. And they did have damage, like their back patio ended up burning, but their house was saved. But then they're dealing with the clearing out, the excavation, all the sound pollution and things like that. And then never mind whatever toxins were still left in the area from the burn. And then also now I know this sounds crazy, but because he was a reality star, but Spencer Pratt, who was on MTV way back in the day, he was the reality bad guy, but he was married to Heidi Montag. They were a reality couple together, and they had what he described as $1 million house in the Palisades, which would be pretty moderate, actually, where they had their children, and they lost everything, as many people did, burned totally to the ground. His parents' house burned to the ground. And what he was saying was that the parents had bought the house for maybe close to $1 million, like back in the 80s or 90s. But in today's day and time, it would cost them $10 million to try to rebuild that. And they didn't have the money. They had to sell the land. So, and that has been a huge thing that he's now running for mayor. I don't know if it's over, but he was in this mayoral campaign because he started pointing out the corruption of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass in the mayor of LA and their complete mismanagement, and calling them out on all these many things that we've just been discussing as far as what actually happened there that made no sense in order to be prepared for fires. And so it's just, there's just so many things that make no sense if you were trying. And why wouldn't you try? Why wouldn't that be absolute priority number one? If you know that you're in a drought prone area, you know that you're in an area that is prone to wildfires. If I ever happen to be in a position of political office and I had anything that I could possibly do to prevent my contingents' homes from burning down, then I would do that. That should be an absolute priority. And it's insane that it isn't. And we have to ask, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the money thing is a big one. I've been looking at, doesn't matter how the fire starts or the flood starts or whatever starts, the disparity between what the county determines your property tax is, what the insurance company determines your value is, and what the actual rebuild cost is. Most people that lose their home, I don't care if they get fully paid out by the insurance company, are not going to be able to rebuild the home. And this is a prime opportunity for people that have lots and lots of money to snatch it up. And let's face it, you know, Ashley, if your house burned down and you had to pay a crew to come out and do the cleanup, that's an additional cost, by the way, to clean it up and all that stuff and re-level the ground and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And then rebuild a house. That's one thing for you to do it. And if I was your neighbor and I had to do it, and Karen was the neighbor and she had to do it, you know, a big company can just pick up 20 lots and have it all done at once at a fraction of the cost that we paid for collectively. They can afford to do that, and they have the money to do that.
Yeah, just anecdotally, this was even before inflation got really out of hand. But we have a piece of property in a more rural part of North Carolina, and it had 2 structures on it. So one was a home, and one was like a tiny little trailer that they had built onto, and they unfortunately were not salvageable, so they had to be bulldozed. So to get both of those structures bulldozed and carried out of there, not only are you supposed to have the permit from the county to do that, which wasn't pulled in this case, had to do that retroactively. Thank goodness they're saving us with permits. But then that had to happen. But the bulldozing, I mean, it was thousands of dollars, and this was before everything even went crazy. And then you have to have dump tickets to prove, you know, that whatever was carried off, and then you have to turn that back into the county. So it's a rigmarole, and that's Western North Carolina. That's not even California. It's not even LA.
And going back to the verse of the week and how you bring your children up, right? So this goes into, this has become normalized to be, you know, to be into the whole permit thing, to need permission to do something. Fortunately, where I live, I don't need permits. It behooves me to go ahead and do a locate if I'm going to dig, because I don't want to dig into a sewer pipe or a electrical line or something like that, because that's going to cost me out of my pocket if I screw that one up. But I have the freedom to decide on what to do, and nobody's going to come out here and tell me what to do, as long as I'm not messing with my neighbor's property. And, you know, back to the verse of the week, our kids are growing up now in this life where everything has to be granted to them, permission, restriction. And we have to tell them that that's not the way that God made us, you know?
Yeah, well, I can guarantee you if I had kids, they would have heard about my opinions on permits. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter, because they have the monopoly on whatever you want to say. So in this case, like, we were just trying to put a little single wide trailer on the property, and you wouldn't believe the rigmarole that we had to go through in order to facilitate all of that. But it was based on step by step. So the demolition was first. It was done without a permit, which would have been fine if I didn't want to do anything else with the property. But whenever you go to say, okay, sir, can I please move this trailer onto this property? And they're like, well, did you get your demolition permits? Was it done in the last 6 months? If not, you have to go to the county commissioners meeting and get it rezoned for something that was already on the property. And so there's a huge holdup. Like, you can't get around it if they have that in place, and you want to actually do something with your own property, unless you feel like trying to sue them. And if you have the money and resources for that, then more power to you. But it's a mess.
Yeah, that's crazy, because like you said, and I've met people in this situation where they wanted to buy a piece of property in the country, and there's an added expense if you want to add city water to it, you want to add power to it, you have to put the power poles in, so much money per power pole, et cetera, et cetera. So what a lot of people will do is buy like a 5-acre piece of land that has some rundown, falling apart, single wide trailer on it, because the utilities are already there. All you have to do is activate them. It saves you a ton of money. But if they're in a permitted area, which fortunately most of these places out here in the country are not, but depending on how close to town you are, you may be, you're going to have to get permission to remove the trailer, which is on wheels, right? You just got to get it set up to be able to pull it out of there and park a new one there, hook up the utilities, bada boom, bada bing. You got yourself a nice new single wide, but you have to get permission to remove the old and then put in the new. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that you have to ask twice to do a quick swap out. You know, that's all you're doing is swapping out. So, but Karen, I'm going to let you go, but I have something before we jump off the trailer thing, because that leads well into Wally Walrus's project that I want to share.
So you moved on to mobile homes?
No, it's it came up, and I had some stuff that Wally shared. I want to share with the audience. It's kind of like cool stuff, a fun topic, but we can hold on that for a minute.
Okay, yeah, this is all really interesting and insidious and horrible, and of course, we know even during COVID, the price of wood went up so much. The price of a sheet of plywood, because of the wood being shipped from Canada and the big shipping crisis during COVID, and the dozens and hundreds of shipping containers on the docks or ships out in the ocean in Long Beach. And so the price of construction materials shot up during COVID. And so I don't think that they've really resolved or gone back down, and they are prohibitive at this point. We have a fence. It's new on 3 sides, but it's falling down on one side. And it's so expensive to put a new fence in these days that we just find other things to do with that money. And this fence, we just keep kind of propping it back up. We're finding old slats, and we could replace it, but it's kind of the principle of the matter. It's ridiculous how much it costs these days for just one fence board.
In Georgia,
whatever it is.
In my neighborhood, they were throwing up new houses left and right. Houses starting in about the 300s, 270, 300 range, and their yards, their backyards, so their lots were probably a 1/4 acre or smaller, and you're just talking the backyard only, so you're talking half of that property or less. They were charging $7 grand on average for a fence. $7 grand.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have a new gate, but we've got one. Well, actually, the neighbor has their fence right on the back of ours, so it's double fenced. So, and the neighbor's fence is in pretty good condition, but ours is pretty ugly. We should just take it down. But it's the principle of the matter. I don't want to go spend money on that. It's ridiculous.
I saw one guy. It was smart. He was smart. So there were 3 houses that were built, and the house left or right of this dude. I actually went there to look at a trailer to buy from him. But anyway, he let the people on the left and right build their fences first, and then he just built a little piece that connected them to make his enclosed. And they're on the hook. If the left or right of his new yard fails, they're on the hook to repair it.
So and then we also know that Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street are buying up houses that go on the market with cash. This has been going on for several years, and we know that they want to move to a rental model or a subscription model. So of course, homeowners will find all kinds of roadblocks to rebuilding and keeping their land. And then there have been jurisdictions or counties that have been caught adjusting, and I think we talked about this on a show, Jason, being caught adjusting the property taxes to fit their budget. So they set their budget. How much shortfall do we have? Okay, let's up the property taxes here so that we can make up that shortfall in our budget. So they basically retroactively changed property assessments so that they can meet their expenses. And of course, we know that they aren't the best budgeters in the world, and there's so much excess and grift and money laundering and things that go on. So I think that's a nationwide phenomenon, but people have been known to actually be able to find that fraud and go to their county and say, hey, what's going on with my property taxes here, and fight it and win. So it's just one more thing. Definitely. It's always something, isn't it? Even owning a mobile home. My cousin, his grandma just died, and he took care of her, and he lives in a very high area to live, a very high residential expense area to live in California, one of the highest in the nations on the California coast, near Santa Cruz, which is like one of the highest cost of living in the nation. So he inherited a house there, but he can't afford to keep it. It's a little house, a little old house from the 70s or 50s, very small, but he can't afford to keep it and pay the property taxes in that area. So he's talking about selling it and buying a mobile home where I live, except just the rent for the space of for a mobile home is $700 or $800 a month just for the space in a mobile home park. So even that, the $700-800 used to be the cost of an apartment per month, and now it's just for a piece of concrete in a mobile home park.
Yeah, we talked about that, Karen, because I dealt with that in Georgia. My property taxes the first year were just a shy under $2,000, like 1,800 or something like that, and within 6 years they were over $6,000. So what's the multiple on that? 3 times, 3x plus. But when I bought the house, it was 210, which was a foreclosure, and it needed a lot of, it needed paint and clean up and all that stuff. Nothing serious, but I think it was valued around 250 to 260. When I sold it, I tried to get 315 for it. I just got a little over 3 for it because of the dynamics of the people couldn't get approved for the loan or whatever. So I came down in the price. So why didn't I get a 3x value? And that's what I was talking about, the disparity on what the county says your stuff is worth, and they charge you rent on your home every year via property tax, but then you don't see the realized gains on that when you sell it, because the market doesn't work that way. You know, it doesn't go off of what your county says it's worth. Zillow definitely doesn't do it. And then your home insurance, if your home were to burn to the ground, doesn't do it either. So it's a real big problem, and a lot of people are dealing with it. And I think that no matter what the disaster or scenario or whatever happens, that you have to get rid of your property, there's people willing to monopolize on that, and they know the game. You know, they know where to look, when to look, how much to offer. I don't know. But anyway, can I share this stuff with Wally's project? I promised him I would show, and then we can go to Ashley with whatever Ashley's got before we get running out of time here.
Sure.
I wanted to do something fun today, guys. I'm sorry. I wanted to do this, and Wally
No
Walrus. So Wally Walrus, one of our listeners, is building. He's taking an old, what is it? Like a horse trailer? It's like a single horse trailer. Maybe you can get 2 in there side by side. I don't know. But he's doing something cool. And I think that we need to do that as we look at financial constraints and stuff like that, and thinking outside the box and taking care of ourselves, and maybe starting our own little side hustle or whatever we got to do. You know, this is a good thing if you can do it. And he's taking this horse trailer, and I agreed I would show some of the progress photos. So here's the back end of the trailer. I'm sure Derek probably is familiar with these kind of trailers, but he's kind of just showing what the trailer looks like. And I don't know if it's going to be like an ice cream stand or what, but look at that. He's got a little window in there, so you can be in there working. I suggested he get like a split unit AC and a generator to add to this, and you can have yourself a nice little go outside the carnival and sell ice cream cones or something in the parking lot.
Very cool.
Yeah.
A little food truck.
Yeah, like a little food truck.
I bought ice cream, and it had fresh nectarines on it, with fresh nectarines at the Organic Stone Fruit Jubilee. There was a little trailer like this selling ice cream with fresh nectarines.
Sounds delightful.
It was.
Yeah, and you can do it yourself. I got a little video here I'll pop up. Let me see. Just using a hammer. He's just doing some work with a hammer. Let me mute myself and play this. It's a really, really short video.
Do you have like a chisel or something? Like a beater bar or something?
Yep. I just thought it'd be fun to pull something positive in today, to say, you know, you can change your stars, if you will. And it's something simple. You could pick up one of these little trailers. Heck, there was one down in the woods. I was actually asking some neighbors about it. I take JJ down on the 4-wheeler, and sometimes we go down to the end of the road where it turns to gravel, and it was just out in the woods. And I was asking the neighbors, like, who does that belong to? It was full of old tires. And I could have easily got my 4x out there and pulled it out, filed for a lost title or something, and done something like this. It was a little bit bigger than this one. And I was like, wow, we can make a little camper out of it. We can go park it on our property, put some solar panels up or a generator, some LED lighting in there. But anyway, I thought it was something fun to add to today, so we don't have to be doom and gloom all the time. So, Ashley, to you, I guess.
Yeah, if you don't want doom and gloom, then I have the story for you. And actually, it's really quick. This is something that many of us have been dealing with. If you're interested in the geopolitical game, which if you're not, I don't blame you, because first of all, it's a very long game. Second of all, it is a lot of it's difficult for us to discern what is actually taking place. What we do know is war is hell, war is a racket, and there's a bunch more that I'm not coming up with on the spot right now. War is the health of the state. We're feeding the military industrial complex, etc. So I think that is something that we can reliably say. But essentially, this is something that we have kind of talked about over the last several weeks, in that with the Iran situation, we had the MOU. We know about Israeli interference in regards to respecting any kind of truce or any kind of attempt at protecting Lebanon from being bombed by Israel, that Israel essentially begins bombing immediately after. They don't respect the any kind of ceasefire whatsoever. But what we did see recently was an escalation on the part of the United States, and particularly they are now targeting civilian infrastructure. So this is, if we are in a slowly boiling frog, or if we are in a situation that is heating up, because we still have the Russia-Ukraine conflict happening, and we do have this kind of like slow simmering. And I think that we are, as I had said before, potentially on a, one assassination of the Archduke of Ferdinand away from some major conflict. I hope that that's not the case, but that's the sense that I get only, right? We know that I'm not in the military. I'm not a military strategist. I'm not a political expert, none of that stuff. I'm just saying this as a regular person who is using a cardboard shim to prop up my monitor. So take that for what it is. But it's just something that I've kind of been looking for. So a quick article here that I'll pull up from Anti-War in regards to this is that, here we go. The U.S. civilian infrastructure, or U.S. strikes civilian infrastructure in Iran, and Donald Trump orders strikes against civilian infrastructure. So this is an absolute escalation based on the back and forth that we've seen. Supposedly, they had been keeping or they had been attempting to keep this to more military or government structure than they are now. So it sounds like civilians have already been lost. Not as many as I would have thought. So no civilians being killed are good, of course, but I was expecting it to be worse. But this isn't great. So he has ordered the strikes against civilian infrastructure in Iran, including bridges, roads, railway, and energy sites. So this is absolutely ramping up or escalating the conflict. And overnight Thursday, the U.S. bombed multiple bridges, a railway, maritime watchtower, and energy sites. The U.S. strikes killed at least 8 Iranians. And this is just addressing the fact that for months, President Trump had threatened to bomb civilian sites if Iran did not comply with his demands, which I find this to be very interesting, because Iran was complying with demands before we bombed them. And I know that us watching and talking about this right now, I know that we know that, but what bothers me is that and I'm not blaming this on the average person. I do not want to say, well, they're so stupid, their attention span or whatever. But if you are a working person and you have a family and a home and all this other stuff, there's only so much that you can keep track of in your brain. So this is part of the information bombardment, and then it is also the slow changing of a story or changing of history. If you repeat something often enough, that's what gets printed, even if it's not true at all. And then in 15 years, people well, maybe they'll think, well, Iran didn't comply. So it's about how things get buried, what gets documented, and things like that. So it bothers me from a future history perspective. And then this says that Iran responded to the attacks by bombing U.S. bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. Tehran, my apologies, also targeted energy sites in Bahrain and a desalination plant in Kuwait. The IRGC claims to have taken out multiple U.S. radar systems and other military equipment. So my understanding from what I've looked at is this is now the goal, that Iran is beginning to look at taking out the US radar systems. And some people think that is why they're slow rolling their retaliation and being very measured. And no matter if we're looking at this on just the basic level, or if there truly is higher up narrative managers that we don't see, either way, the presentation from Russia and the presentation from Iran is that they are being measured and trying to be logical with the decisions that they're making, versus the presentation of the United States and Israel being presented in a very rash way. So for whatever that's worth, this is kind of the dialectic or the dynamic that has been set up to be presented to us. And although it obviously is very important news, but this has been going on for months now. But the reason that I wanted to mention is because I've been trying to keep an eye on it, and because this is just the next escalation in what potentially is happening and what could be turning into, at the very least, a Middle East wide conflict. And we already have a ton of conflict happening there as we speak. And we have with Israel and Palestine, and then Israel bringing Lebanon into the fold. Obviously, the United States meddling, the Arab Spring, Syria. There's just a lot happening here. And so this piece of the United States-Iran conflict is but a tiny little nugget of that. But I think it matters if we're looking at the picture in entirety, or as we're learning the full picture in entirety, this piece is going to be important.
I agree. This Iran thing, number one, I like what you said about, and I agree about history being rewritten in real time. And I think that's why it's important that we report on this, and for posterity, people can go back and look at what was happening at the time. That's a unique time that we're living in, is that, we're not going to a microfiche and looking up history through a black and white, photograph of a newspaper page, which was controlled media back then, just like it is today. But you have so much out there, and this is why they are scrubbing a lot of things, I believe. But history is going to be rewritten right now. I don't understand how we can sit there and say that Iran's not agreeing to this, that, and the other, when Trump out the other side of his mouth says he's not even negotiating with him anymore because they're stupid to negotiate with. So what are they violating? What are they not negotiate? How are you going to tell me you're not going to negotiate with them and say they're not keeping their end of the bargain on the negotiation table? And then the whole, we're bombing them, and then we're taking a break, ceasefire. Okay, we're going to restart. Oh, that resets the clock to bypass the congressional approval for an actual war, because there's the War Powers Act, right? What is it, like 60 days or something like that? Is it 60 or 90? I can't remember off the top of my head. But you can't just go to war because the president wants to go to war. But that's what we have done. And he's using a loophole in the system and using this ceasefire stuff and the calling off negotiations, and we're done, and then we're back in it, and then we're done again. This is absolute ridiculousness, and this will not be recorded in history like this. It won't be, depending on who the victor is, right? Because the victor writes the history. The victor chooses who the good person was and the bad person was. So I don't like where we're going, and everyone wants to jump on Trump for this, but I would also jump on our Congress, because Congress should be calling bullshit to this and saying, no, they hold the purse strings, right? They can cut this off immediately. They can cut off funding.
Of course. And this is the problem with having such a strong Zionist lobby. And we have people, this is one of the reasons that is so frustrating, is because I mean, and I'm not saying I watch every piece of news about every Congress critter, but I don't see Chuck Schumer out here criticizing Donald Trump anymore. That's because they all agree on this stuff, or most of them agree. Obviously, what we did see was the members of Congress that were speaking out and had questions against, or questions about the relationship with Israel and dual citizenship and things like that, whether we believe in them, the political system, or whether you're an anarchist or what. But we did see them be ostracized. We saw that with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We saw that with Thomas Massey. We saw them say that the reason that he ended up losing his reelection bid was because of the Zionist lobby and the money of people like Miriam Adelson contributing so much to essentially buy the win for the pro-Israel or the pro-Zionist candidate. So this is one of the things that's so frustrating, is because there is not a lot of disagreement at all from those people. And we saw them talking about, ripping up his speech notes and things like that. And they wanted to impeach his entire first term. We saw those constant discussion of impeachment. And yet many of those people are still here, and they're not talking about impeaching anymore. It's because they support the cause. They support the war, the corruption, the lobbyists. It's disgusting.
It would be interesting to do a quick audit of everyone who's not saying, the dogs that aren't barking, to look at their investments lately, their contributions, if they're running for re-election, because we do have midterms coming up, right? Take a look at the inflow of money. And especially I'd like to look at their stock portfolios, and then compare that to who is supplying this equipment for this ongoing Middle East conflict, and see if there is some funnel back into that. I think that would be interesting to look at, because that's what I see in the military complex.
And one of the things that we know for sure is that there was documented major wins for people who are playing the stock market that are, of course, indicative of insider trading. And there's investigations, but we don't have any information about exactly who benefited from that. And that's one of the questions that we talk about all the time. Cui bono, who benefits? So not only is this setting up military contractors to get absolutely paid, it's setting up for Israel to, if they truly have plans for the Greater Israel Project, then this is certainly paving the way for that and continuing to provide support for them. And it is also a wealth transfer. And that's one of the things that we talked about before. This is what, in every single event, that is a common factor. We saw big business win and big government that are working hand in hand. We saw them win. We saw corporate hospital systems win over being perversely incentivized to classify someone as having had COVID, and perversely incentivized in order to admit them or to give them remdesivir or whatever that looks like. And this is a similar situation every single time. Wealth transfer. The regular people continue to struggle. Worse off people in the Middle East continue to be bombed. And then the people at the top, the people who are involved in this corrupt game, they continue to get richer and richer and richer.
Agreed. Karen, you're reading the chat.
I don't have anything to add. I feel like we're stating the obvious that we've stated a million times at this point. Unfortunately, it's all the same game. It's the few versus the working class, or the struggling people, or the regular people. And we've got the fourth, or the forced industrial revolution going on, and you will own nothing and be happy. The tokenization of everything. I've been having a good talk in the chat with somebody I've never met before, Tara Petra Wild, who was a forestry graduate. And my first love, I wanted to be my first love was baseball, but after that it was forestry. I wanted to be a forest ranger, and I had every intention of doing that. I was a biology major. But I have a great love for the forest and the wilderness and all things natural and wild, all creatures and everything organic. And I think it's so important. Bronx Stomper was also mentioning how so many farmers at this point are focusing more on killing and dominating the plants and animals rather than working with the natural regenerative systems. And that's absolutely the truth of the whole thing that we see here. We don't see the harmony, working in harmony together as communities, as families, as natural local systems, and the states as a republic. Everything is being corporatized, monopolized, integrated, digitized, tokenized, and Courtney Turner was big talking about the tokenization of natural resources, and we see grabs for natural resources everywhere. This conflict in Iran is allegedly over a natural resource, which would be oil or shipping resources, etc. So I think that this all ties into one thing, and we've talked about it extensively. And unfortunately, we see so many incidents or events in our lives one by one over the years with COVID, with the hospital systems, the medical system, big pharma, the food systems, even the whittling down of mom and pop stores or choices, small businesses of all sorts, the trades, online school, which draws people away from learning in person, learning from one another, learning skills. I am seeing a trend towards students learning the skills again, electricians or woodworkers or masons, stonemasons, those types of things, where young people are going into trades instead of going to college or computer sciences. And I think that that's a key. We have Pat the plumber in our community, and he works so hard, but he's providing a key service to so many people night and day. He has a great family and works so hard to provide for his family, but also for his community with his own plumbing business. So I think that those types of things, we need to support local businesses. We need to support our local farmers. We've been talking about with Bronk in the chat about the standards for organic milk, and I use raw milk, but Ashley said she's losing her raw milk co-op, but hopefully she can find another one. So I think it's important that we find those local farmers and producers and small businesses of all types and support them, because those are the choices that are being taken away from us. And this is all by design, because all of those things provide connection with one another, with the earth, with our traditional ways of doing things, with the past, connection with the past memories. You're talking about history being rewritten. It's important to know your history. We talked one time recently about pictures, how so many of us take pictures constantly, but they're all online. We don't take the time to actually print pictures and save those memories. And those are the types of things that provide history and a sense of belonging and a sense of identity to our children also. So that's maybe an important point to remember with your children, is to tell them the stories of your childhood, to take the time to listen to grandparents if they're still around, to maybe do some genealogy or visit homesteads or family where family lived previously, to do those types of things, go to cemeteries and keep that history alive locally and personally and in your family and community. But I agree. I see huge market manipulation every time Trump opens his mouth. I'm wondering what's in it for him. What's it going to do for the market? Who's paid him off? At this point, whose interest is he looking after market wise? Because with these, you just never know what he's going to say. But there is a predictable pattern to it, and that is that he's making money and his friends are making money, and the people who that he's looking out for, the non-Irish, as Don Jeffries calls them, they are also making money too. So I think we all have a pretty good idea what's going on here, and unfortunately I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
No, I don't disagree with that. My concern is the escalation piece of,
Yes.
because it's bad enough, the manipulation, the market manipulation, all this stuff, but everything else is certainly very concerning. And at quick point, I did want to say I lost my milk because of the move, not because they're closing down. So, and just on a personal note, these people are absolutely amazing. They're in the A2 raw milk farm generationally, and they do so much for the community. They're amazing people, and I hated having to send them a message telling them that I couldn't get my milk from there anymore. But anyway, side note, so Bronk did on my show give a website where I can try to find raw milk close to me, so I am going to do that.
Right on. Well, does anyone have anything else? I know we went a little over today. I probably have another hour's worth of stuff to cover that I'll either save for the next Eric Peters episode, or I may do an impromptu foxhole episode and do that and just throw it up. But anyone else have anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Ashley, if you're good, I'll do the plugging. And if you wanted to do the shout outs for our chat, and then Karen, you close this out. Does that sound like a plan?
Sure.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, here we go. I do need to update this. I saw Indy was in the chat. I'll shout him out. Indy, I promised to put you on our list a long time ago, and I had dropped the ball. I will get back on that because I have to do an update to the website anyway. But here's the Knights of the Storm website. It's thenightsofthestorm.com, where you can read about us. You can actually see if it's still working. Let's see if this is still working. Oh, yeah, it is. Cool. So this RSS video feed is still working. You can actually watch the episodes there. There are audio podcasts that are RSS feeds. So as long as they add stuff, you can go there. It doesn't give us credit. It gives them credit. So if it watches on Spotify or wherever their preferred is, they get the view credit for that. This is just a place where you won't get any of our ads or anything like that because we don't do ads. And then our friends list, of course, we do have your show there. Think, Change, Repeat, Ashley, and we will be adding your new one, Fool Me Twice, which I like. I love that. I love that freaking whole format, and the graphics simple. It's just awesome. So we'll add that, and we'll get you in there as well, Indy from Indie News Network. And here you go. There's Ashley on her. Well, you can talk about it, Ashley. Don't let me talk for it for you.
Well, just say really quickly that I'm trying to have, my conversations on the internet, and I'm trying to improve my, my production value as I go, and I'm learning a lot and had a lot of a learning curve. And as many of you may have heard me say before, Doc Rock helped with my thumbnail, my intro, my outro for my Think, Change, Repeat show. And then the other stuff, I am trying to do that for Fool Me Twice. I'm trying to learn myself. So I'm getting there. And I did want to say, I confirmed with Sean, we are going live this coming Friday, July 24th at 9:30 p.m. And that's going to be part 2 of our TWA episode. And then I'm not 100% sure of our timeline because he's really busy as well. But the next live that we do after that will be with our friend Doc Rock, and we're going to be talking some James Bond. So I'll try to keep everybody up to date on that. And then I also wanted to say that Doc's movie tonight is 55 Days at Peking. And I'm going to drop his Discord link in the chat so everybody can, if you are in the mood for a movie tonight, that is what he is showing. You can join his Discord, and then he puts the link for his Zoom presentation right there. Anybody is welcome. If you would like to throw him a little, a ticket, a couple bucks for a movie ticket price for the work that he does. He puts on a lot of work, has pre-show entertainment. He likes to show an old cartoon. And then he normally has a presentation of research that he has done on the movie, which is actually one of my favorite parts of Doc's work. So just wanted to shout him out. And then if I may, go ahead and run through our the folks in the chat.
Can I throw one thing in on Doc's show?
Yeah.
His movies he picks out and the pre-show and post-show is usually conducive to events that are happening currently. And he opens it up for conversation afterwards. And that's my favorite part, is the after conversation where you can throw your 2 cents in on it.
Yeah.
And that's all I had to add. Ashley, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So for the folks that were in our chat, as you know, I try to keep track of everybody. It's a busy chat. So if I missed you, please let me know. I'm going to take full responsibility today and not blame Jason. We had Little John, Nostradamus, Skunk Hollow Rose Gardens, Big Ron, LT Oracle of Truth, Sweets, Andy, Bronx Stomper, Yona, Nature Boy Dave, Tony Ty, I Handy, Karen Peterson, Be My Valentine, A Dingo Ate Me Baby, Bride Deb Mac, Ronnie Omelets, Spirit of the Age, Tara Preda Wild, Misfit 1904, Billy Ray Valentine, D2T, I Token I Know Things, Do Not Obey, and Indie News. And again, if I did miss anybody, I truly apologize. Chime in the chat really quick and I'll try to get you.
Right
Okay.
on. Final thoughts and close this out, Karen?
Well, it's kind of an overwhelming time in history, isn't it? We covered so many things today. It was great to see some new people in chat and all of our old friends. And we talked about teaching your children well. This the old Crosby, Stills and Nash song comes to mind. Teach your children well. Bring up your child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they will return to those ways. So I think that's a really great message, and it's something that we need to try to do to the best of our ability to remain optimistic, to remember what's important to us, to spend the time to be centered and spend that time with nature and with our families and our pets and with each other here too is important. And I will launch my show on Monday, July 27th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. So that would be 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know if Deb McCartney will be my guest yet or not, but if she's not, we'll find somebody else. So if you're interested in being a guest on my show, I'd love to have you. So you can reach me through the KotS email or on Twitter. You can DM me on the backside of Twitter, as Gard would say, and I'd be glad to start lining up some people to come on my show and ideas for what you'd like to do on my show. We don't have to cover hard news all the time. We could cover a variety of things. I've been in this conspiracy or whatever you want to call it, alt media world for quite a long time, and I've been down most of the rabbit holes. And so I'm always learning and always open to new ideas and try to keep an open mind and not get too far out into the weeds, but I definitely enjoy going there too. And I also enjoy the woo at times. So whatever you'd like to hear about or talk about, let me know. And I hope everybody has a great weekend, and that if you're in the smoke, that you can find things to do inside and that smoke clears up for you and you take proper precautions, and air purifier can help quite a bit. Or if you're having a heat wave or flooding, our prayers are with you, or health issues in your family. So we're thinking about all of you and offering our support. And with that said, I will end it with keep your sword sharp, keep your armor tight, shine your light, and have a good week. And thanks everybody so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, and share if you are so moved.
All right. Thank you, Karen. God bless all. Take care.